everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So today we're talking about getting old. Actually, we're talking about growing younger because aging isn't what it used to be. Today we're exploring how science, culture, and a bit of self-experimentation, or a lot in some cases, are really changing what it means to grow older and challenging the notion that aging is fixed because you can reverse it. People are trying all sorts of things, from hyperbaric oxygen chambers, glucose monitors, methylene blue, young blood infusion. I don't mean young blood the singer, or that's probably next. Gene therapy, all sorts of things. I am 50 years old, is my chronological age, and I've recently done a biological age test, and I'm 30, which kind of annoys my husband because he was like, you just go out and get pissed all the time. So maybe there's the secret in that, but we will find out. But what works? That is the question. And can we all leave today feeling 40 years younger? We will find out. It's my pleasure to introduce our panel. Katherine Ryan, comedian, presenter, all-round legend, and host of smash hit podcast, What's My Age Again? Katherine? She's coming, promise.
I was kind of
leaving me hanging.
Hello. Do you want me next to you?
Sit there next to me, please. Dr. Nichola Conlon, a scientist specialising in cellular ageing, how we age on the inside. Keep the round of applause going. She's worked in the longevity space for a long, long time before everybody else started gigging in on it. Yeah. And Kat Wiles, award-winning strategist with a sharp eye on where culture is heading and how ageing is perceived, which has led her to explore the world of longevity. So welcome, guys. So first question to all of you. Katherine, you first. How old do you feel today and why?
Well, now I feel really old because I messed up the intro. I hoped that we'd come out in unison like a girl band. I wasn't able to attend the Mighty Hoopla, and that has upset me. And I sort of thought we'd come out as like girls aloud.
We didn't practice it, did we?
Fine. I feel old. I feel like I like being old, though. I would like to be old, rich old, you know? Like Kris Jenner, facelift, designer clothes, attitude.
So that's you just want to be older then?
Yes, now. Eccentric. No one wants to sit near me on public transport. I got a lot of small dogs. I'm looking forward to it.
Nichola, how old do you feel today? What?
I mean, as a longevity expert, if I didn't answer and say I felt young, then there would be something wrong. So I do feel young, but you know, when you talk about age, it's like everyone associates it with a number, and that number is meant to be associated with a way that you should feel. But I think, as we're probably going to learn in this panel, the number kind of doesn't matter anymore, and the number doesn't link to something specific anymore. So.
Good answer. You're going to give us all the answers. And Kat, how old do you feel today and why?
I woke up probably feeling about 85. Yeah. I jumped in and I had a cold shower to prepare for this talk. So I came out feeling about 60. Did a bit of meditation, had a mushroom coffee, probably feeling like mid-30s. So I'm hoping for it to go backwards.
Mushroom
at
coffee
the end of this.
Or mushroom coffee?
No, like not the mushroom coffee.
Well, we'll soon find out which kind of mushroom that you've been on. So let's talk about why ageing matters more than ever. It's a hot topic, as we said. It's kind of across science and storytelling and society. Every day there seems to be a new piece of research that's coming out. I mean, Nichola, I texted you yesterday, didn't I? There's like $101 million fund for longevity or something.
Yeah. There's just been released. It's called the X Prize. And it's $101 million prize for a team of scientists to basically prove that they can knock around between 10 and 20 years, they've given it quite a wide berth, off a person's biological age. And they're really measuring this for the first time, not looking at a specific age-related disease, but actually looking at age as the root cause of the problem. Yeah. So this shows like how it really is becoming... You know, it's really becoming mainstream and really serious. The last kind of X Prizes were about getting into space. So this is the kind of...
just shows the world is changing.
Yeah.
And Katherine, so hopefully most people would have listened to your new podcast, What's My Age Again? But if they haven't, can you explain the premise of the podcast? Because it's all about this kind of topic, and what made you want to do it?
Yes, What's My Age Again is a hit. Everyone loves it unanimously because I did not conceive it. Lucie and Lucie's team at Bauer came to me with the idea of exploring biological age, how old you are on a cellular level, along with a very accomplished science woman. And then we would interview celebrities, comedians, actors, political figures who were interested in the same thing. They gave us their blood, their actual blood, which is a great jumping off point for an interview. So we talk about their stress levels and their lifestyle, what they're doing, and then we get some real actionable advice from Nichola when she reveals their results. Some people are really happy with the result. Some people are not. It's destabilizing either way, so we get a great, very layered interview.
Has anyone sort of surprised you guest-wise?
I knew that Katie Price would be incredible.
Tomorrow's episode, by the way.
So she did not surprise me, though she lived up and possibly exceeded my expectations. I think she's very resilient and authentic, and I love people who overshare. That's why I do it, as a language of love, in hopes that it comes back to me. And it does. Like, people stop me on the street to tell me about their divorce. I know before the husbands a lot of the time. And the amount of trauma that lovely woman has had to shoulder in this country. Nichola and I were just saying backstage that she became infamous at a time when the media was quite savage, and it was her. Like, she was. So that has, it will not surprise anyone, impacted her biological age. Even though she looks very young through other procedures, you know, you carry things. So it was a great chat as far as I was concerned. I love her.
And what about how people talk about aging? Did that surprise you in terms of how people sort of, some people care? Did they all sort of mind being older or younger?
Well, I think we had a good mix. I think that's what's great about What's My Age Again. And going into the podcast, I wanted to make sure, especially with me, I've been very open about fillers and Botox and plastic surgeries, and because of that, I get it heaped on like I've had more than I have actually had. I wanted to make it clear that the podcast wasn't about that, and that this was about cellular level aging, how well people feel, how young people feel for longer. And I think what we found from all of the guests across the board is that regardless of tweakments and beauty things they were doing, a lot of them want to hang on to their quality of life and their youthful energy for longer.
So, Dr. Nichola, you've been studying longevity for longer than most. What is it? I mean, why is everyone talking about it now? Why is biohacking everywhere?
So for me, it's really funny because, I mean, I've been in this space for well over a decade now, and when I used to talk about longevity and reversing aging and things like that, everyone literally used to look at me like, what a weirdo. You know, we're not going to sit next to her. This is crazy. So now the fact that we're sitting on a podcast doing it together is like showing how there's been this huge reversal of everyone's perspective on this. And I think the real reason why we're seeing it suddenly become this popular topic where everyone's talking about longevity and everyone's talking about biohacking is because for the first time in human history, we actually know that there is something you can do to reverse the rate that you will age. And up until this point, you know, throughout the entire history of mankind, we never believed that aging was anything you could do. There was nothing you could do about it. You know, it was this set program. It was something that was built into us as humans, that once the clock had kind of started ticking, there was nothing you can do about it. But now what all the science over the last decade has shown us is that this is absolutely not the case, and that aging is something that not only you can speed up, but you can also slow it down. And this is where this concept of biological age comes in, which is what we've been testing for all the celebrities on the podcast. And many people might not realize, but you've actually got two ages. So as scientists, we now consider to have people that have two ages. You've got your chronological age, the age you are according to your birth certificate, but you've got your biological age, and that is the age that you are on the inside, and that's what we've been testing. And whilst a lot of you guys are probably sitting there thinking, do you know what, I don't even know if I want to know what my biological age is on the inside, as scientists, why we were really excited about this discovery was because quite often a person's biological age and their chronological age don't always match. And that's really significant because, for example, somebody could be age 50, but when we measure their biological age, they might be more like age 60, which shows they're aging faster, or they might be age 40, which shows they're aging slower. And what that showed us is that aging is not fixed.
Yeah.
Because if aging was fixed, if it was this programmed thing that we've all been taught to believe, then your biological age and your chronological age should always be identical, but they're not. And that showed us as scientists that there's something happening in our bodies at the cellular level to either speed up the aging process or to slow it down. And that's what was exciting, because if there's something going on in our cells, it means that there's actually something we can do about it. So that's why there's been all of this resurgence of research and why people are suddenly really talking about it, because this is something that has now become possible.
And there's different kinds of tests that you can do, aren't there? It's not like there's one test that defines it all.
Yeah, so when we're looking at biological age testing, what we're looking at is there's a few different types. The one we use on the podcast is a test called glycanage, and what that does is it looks at patterns of these things called glycans, which are like little sugar molecules on your immune cells. Now, if you look at a young person, they'll have a very specific pattern, and if you look at an older person, they'll have a very different pattern. And by taking a blood sample, like we did with all the guests, we can look at what their pattern is, and then we can use that to predict what biological age they should be. There's also other ways of doing this where we look at patterns of genes that are switched on and off. So a young person will have a very different pattern of genes that are switched on in their cells compared to an old person. So again, we can look at the different patterns and actually predict how well you are really aging on the inside. And this is a much better predictor of future health than your chronological age.
It is fascinating. Katherine and I are learning a lot through your conversation. Kat, what cultural shifts are we seeing around age? How are sort of media brands catching up?
Well, I think, we touched on some already, but I think one of the biggest shifts that's happening is a shift from talking about and thinking about lifespan to health span. So it's no longer just about the actual number of years that you're living, but the number of healthy years.
Yeah.
And as you get older, the quality of life that you've got. And actually, I was in the taxi on the way here, and when I got up at ridiculous o'clock this morning, before my cold shower, and I was with the taxi driver, who was like 62, looks really young, and he was just talking about like lifting weights and how one of his inspirations is someone online who's about 80 who's lifting weights. So there's kind of lots more, happening in there, and that's really accelerated online in terms of people understanding it's much more about health span than lifespan.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's happening at the same time is really a shifting narrative, especially I think for middle-aged women, away and how as culture we look at aging, away from a narrative about decline to one of potential. And I think that's a lot of that. There's the social media hasn't done everything that's been amazing in some of our lives, but one good thing is that different voices are getting out there. We're seeing the real stories of how people are aging, and maybe a surprising example that I'd give. I don't know how many people have heard of this, but I think QVC are doing a really great job of this.
How?
They've got something called Menopause Monday, which is a monthly show, and it's a bit like a kind of curation of conversations around menopause, perimenopause, but also curating products as well. Of course, it's QVC, isn't it? So you've got different things like, mood lifters, cooling sheets,
Brilliant.
collagen gummies, like kind of all the things that you would need. And I think they're doing such a brilliant job to just, because advertising traditionally has been, when in the way that it's been, bought and talked about and briefed in, guilty of that, over the years for creatives. It's kind of pre-40s, but that invisibility's, going. So there are certain brands that are starting to get that, and they're going to be the ones that win.
I'm tuning into QVC soon.
Yeah,
work out which Monday it is. Katherine, when you were interviewing people, and obviously talking to Nichola, what key themes came out from different interviews you've done across the podcast? Because you've interviewed a wide range of ages, different types of guests. What did you learn?
We would talk about different areas of life that would impact biological age, either positively or negatively. So we'd speak about their career, the fulfillment that they got from that, equally the stress that came from their experiences. We talk about family. Apparently being in a heteronormative relationship married to a man is physically very dangerous for women in more ways than one. It makes you ugly just being with a loser. And it ages you as well because your cortisol spikes. And listen, but being married to a woman is very beneficial for men in terms of biological age.
Yeah.
Someone's reminding them to brush their teeth. I don't know. And I actually was shocked to learn that we had actually crackheads on the podcast, I would say. As someone who's never been a Class A drug user.
You were obsessed with how many drugs they'd had.
We had so many, celebrities. So especially if you were famous in the 90s, people would abuse drugs and alcohol and bounce back from that. Mm-hmm. And that's what was really interesting for me personally, seeing, my future in my 70s on MDMA. That's the plan. Nichola would illuminate all these subjects, like if you start taking care of yourself, then this biological age is reversible. We spoke about hyperbaric oxygen chambers and cold plunge therapy, and the fact that this NAD, this NAD, that everyone seems to be talking about, sometimes the molecule is too big to fit inside the cell, so you have to be taking the right kind of NAD. Olive oil is a wonderful thing that can change your life and change your biological age overnight. And magnesium and all of these things, it was great to weave those in to a conversation about, someone doing a marathon in a bra and people's dating history. And, it was childhood trauma. It was all science meets comedy meets probing interview. I learned so much every time. It was great.
Perfect, Rick. So Nichola, and obviously you're on the podcast, you're sort of teaching the celebrities what they can do, and then the audience. What can we all do now to sort of slow down our age?
Yeah, and I think just to point out, the reason this is so important, everyone thinks it's about living longer, but just what Kat had said, it's really about extending our health span, which is, the proportion of our lives are in good health. And just to put that into perspective, for a woman in the UK, because women actually, although we live longer, we have shorter health spans than men. Our current life expectancy is 83. Our health span expectancy is only 64. So that's a huge gap where we're expected to not be in good health. So all of this conversation around reversing biological age is about how we can take these longer lifespans, but actually live them in good health, happy, independent, able to do, what we want to do. And when it comes to reversing biological age, a lot of people thought that you couldn't do anything about it because it was all to do with your genetics, and people blame their parents and I've got these genes and I'm never going to age well. But actually it's been found that it's only 20% is your genetics and actually 80% is lifestyle. And that's when we kind of go back to looking at all the boring things that we've heard about before. We've heard about the diet, the exercise, the sleep, but now we're actually putting numbers to those things where we really do know that these are not just old wives' tales. They really do reverse biological age. So, for example, let's just look at sleep. People who get less than 6 hours sleep, it can add around 9 years to their biological age. And shift workers, in fact this study was done in nurses, looking at shift workers and the impact that sleep disruption has on it, and it really does increase biological age. Diet is another one. The Western diet, a pro-inflammatory diet that we're all eating, literally adds years. If you can swap that to a more Mediterranean type diet, and if you can reduce the carbs, again, we see studies that in just 8 weeks, you can actually reverse biological age by around 3.5 years, just by shifting your diet a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And what about supplements?
So so supplements, so supplements is a huge area that I've specialized in. So my background was actually in drug development, developing drugs to slow aging. Which
Not the kind of drugs we're
Well, not that kind of drug. Put that out there. Yeah, developing drugs to slow aging, because we actually know age is our biggest risk factor for every major disease that drugs companies are trying to treat. But when I worked in that space, actually a lot of molecules that were very good at slowing biological age were not your typical drugs. They were natural molecules, things that were found in plants, which is why diet is so good for us. And when I left my job in drug development to start a supplement company, everyone was like, oh, snake oil, like, when are you going to go back to your proper job? These things don't work. But actually, we now know that if supplements are formulated correctly, used in the correct formats, that they can actually have a real impact. Certainly a lot of the research that I've done, because as a scientist I still actively do research, we developed a formulation, it's actually an NAD booster, that has been proven in a human double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trial, which is usually only reserved for a drug trial, to actually reverse biological age. So we're now seeing that supplements, something that most people can have access to, something they can incorporate in their everyday lives, are actually working to reverse aging. And that's a first.
We'll all be on stage next year. We'll be 12. Kat, have you tried longevity hacks, any sort of anti-aging treatments?
Oh my goodness, what haven't I tried? It's like a ongoing pursuit. Like my friends always joke about that I'm in like my amateur biohacking era. So what am I on at the moment? I'm into
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms, the shrooms in the morning. Cryotherapy chamber, which is like, for anyone who doesn't know, it's you go into this crazy cold chamber for 3.5 to 5 minutes. Obviously I do 5. And it's minus 85 degrees C.
Oh my God.
Just listening to like a banging tune. My friend told me that I was doing it wrong the first time I went, because I just stood there and she was like, no, put a song on, go and do some squats and you can lose like 800 calories in 5 minutes. I was like, I am committed, right? So I was back. But what I do before that is I go into red light therapy first, because it kind of softens the blow of the cold. But weirdly, something happens to your body, which is that I find it a lot less cold than I live in Brighton. When there hasn't been like sewage overflow, I'll go for like a bit of a swim and find that a lot colder actually than the chamber. And then other stuff I've kind of dabbled in, NAD+, but the wrong one, because I'm not using Nichola's, which is Nichido, and actually since I've been using that, I have been feeling better, sharper, more focused. So I'll give that a shout out, because that really worked for me. And then the other, like the crazy thing that I'm doing at the moment,
like a long list.
Yeah, I know, I'll stop, don't worry, is methylene blue, which is like
what is that?
It's like a blue food dye. No, not food dye. It was actually, I think it's a clothes dye. So it just kind of makes you sharper, calmer. But word to the wise, pop it into some water first and drink it from that. Otherwise, you end up really, really hyper blue tongue that people are asking what's wrong with you all day in new business meetings, and it's really not a good look.
Like Bridget Jones' blue soup, she had some there.
Yeah.
Katherine, why do you think comedy is such a sort of good way to break taboos around aging, and why are people so obsessed with aging, do you think?
Well, I love that people are enjoying life and they would like to extend it. They want to extend the quality of their lives, especially when we talk about the biological gender gap with bearing children. Women are prioritizing education and careers. They're having children later. I have babies the way a drunk person eats chicken nuggets, just all at once with complete disregard for what it's doing to my body. But I'm going to be an old mom. And I think it makes sense that we just want to be around and be healthy and be well for as long as possible. And the bridge with comedy, I suppose, is that people just look to comedians for honesty, total transparency. I think there is still, especially in this country, not so much where I grew up in North America, though not America, there is a lot of shame and secrecy. And even when I came to this country my girlfriends were getting plastic surgery in high school, and I came here and people didn't have orthodontics, and I was like, you guys could be hot. And I think comedy is finding lightness in the dark.
Yep.
We're not scared to talk about death. We're not scared to talk about aging, and we're shameless. So we're not scared to talk about, all right, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
What can I do?
I mean, and you called it first with Kris Jenner's.
I was the first person in the world to identify Kris Jenner's latest facelift surgeon, but I've got no credit for that. But that's fine. I don't think maybe he wanted to be known because he's very busy.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get on the wrong side of him because I need him to be on the right side of my new face.
Kat, how can age be seen as a more creative force if we're talking about sort of the industry?
Yes, I just think that, I mean, it's probably one of the last areas when you think about age is where there's, bias towards, in the industry, older people in the industry, being represented, staying in the, industry, stuff like that. But I think, my experience in terms of, getting older, it brings with it a degree of depth, perspective, honesty, with yourself and with others. I think it's just like, I was kind of dreading going into my 40s, and I think probably I'm like more in my rebel spirit and, standing more in my own power now than I have been before. And I think also if we look to out into culture and society, and we think, we need to remember that the boomers invented punk. Gen X were the original latchkey generation, the first to be able to just, go out. They had the first generation where they had 2 working parents. They'd come home, they had their own keys, yep. They'd let themselves in. And then, of course, Gen Y, revolutionizing the workplace, wellness, and, disrupting the whole narrative. So, when you think about those generations, they're not going off into the sunset quietly, yeah. Or anything like that. So I think we need to start thinking differently. Anyone in communications, branding, kind of looking at that. And I think as a middle-aged woman, it's particularly exciting time to be able to be trying all these crazy biohacking-y types of things. And actually one thing you said, Nichola, as well, which was about feeling younger in your head, I probably feel about 31 in my head. And there was a study done in Denmark, actually, I think in 2018, which showed that the average person over 40, it was a massive research study done with over 5,000 people, felt 20% younger than their chronological age. So in good company there. So anyone over 40, whether you think that's true or not, but I think probably representative of a lot of my friends. And
I wonder if we'll all soon there will be a time when we just talk about our biological age and not the age on our birth certificate. What about, so if it does become mainstream, how are we going to make sure that it's not just something that the wealthy can access then?
Well, I think that's a really important question. It's worrying kind of if we get it wrong, because actually it can't be something within society that it's only available for the elites. A lot of the things that I'm talking about, mainly because I'm like a real rubbernecker biohacker, like trying these things, but wouldn't be able to afford to do them all the time, yet to try hyperbaric, it's on the list. But I think that we're already starting to see warning signs about inequality. As you started to touch on, Nichola, there is there's a bit of a warning sign from ONS in one of the recent studies showed that age and lifespan is actually starting to go backwards for the first time in decades. And that, for me, I look at that as a bit of a warning sign. And especially, there's a disparity in lifespan between London and some of the more deprived areas in the northeast of over 10 years. Mm-hmm. That's really concerning, and that's really worrying. And when you then take a step back and you think, well, actually, so many private health providers already are giving away smartwatches and things for get your steps in. You're going to get a, kind of lower premium if you're doing that. But what about if you then jump forward a bit, where everybody then starts talking about what your biological age is versus your chronological age, and your premiums start going up if your biological age is not as good as someone who's wealthy. So that divide is a real worry and concern. So really, I think that's a call to policymakers, workplaces, to really start, how can we start leveling this so that it's not just something that can be accessed by the few, but for the many, and everyone should be able to access
Like the easiest first step is just providing access to mental health care. It's difficult to get your steps in when your mental health is in the toilet, and I don't know why this government doesn't do that, but that's a chat for a different panel.
But yeah, you're right, and I guess mental health and stress and how you're feeling has a massive impact.
A massive impact. So we see, again, this is supported by scientific studies, that people who suffer from stress, especially anyone who's had some sort of traumatic time and has any sort of PTSD, which a lot of people do, actually, undiagnosed, can add 15 years onto your biological age. So, we've always joked, the stress will age me, or the stress will turn me grey, or whatever. It's actually, the science is there, which has proven it, which shows we really do, as a society, have to tackle issues of stress. But in terms of, interesting what you say about, is this something that is, how are we going to make sure this is fair? Because certainly I've seen, I always say I've seen it that where it's being made elitist. You see Silicon Valley execs, these are all the people that are doing all the hyperbaric and all the methylene blue and all of these different crazy biohacks. Brian Johnson. I was literally just going to mention his name. Anyone familiar with Brian Johnson? He was a tech billionaire who now basically...
I don't think he looks any better than...
No, I don't think he does. But he spends $2 million a year trying to basically age backwards and become the slowest aging person on the planet. And as part of this, he does things that are definitely not accessible to the masses, and definitely, still in this sort of research phase. For example, he takes the blood of his young son and has an infusion of young blood. Now, nobody's going to suddenly start doing that. I have to say, that's the scientific theory.
I'm like my 6-year-old.
The scientific theory is sound. Like, we know, and we've known for a long time, that people with younger blood are aging better, and that's because they've got less inflammation. But there's a lot of easier ways that you can reduce inflammation than have to siphon some blood off another person, which I'm definitely not condoning. But I think in terms of policy, Katherine, what you said is, this is something that has to completely change at a policy level. And the way I always say of how I think this is heading is, where I think we are now with aging research and aging is where we were with cancer research maybe 50, 60 years ago. So back then, if someone got cancer, it was like, oh dear, bad luck, there's nothing really we can do, sorry. But now, thanks to improvements in medicines and treatments and screening, it would be unethical if we just turned around to someone with cancer and said, oh, well, it's bad luck, there's nothing we can do for you. You're getting the treatment, you're getting everything, because we know it's a possibility. And I think where we are now with aging is kind of back where we used to be with cancer, where it's like, oh, you're getting old, it's an age-related disease, bad luck, get on with it, go to a care home, sorry, you can't remember anyone anymore. It's we're kind of just like, not our problem, nothing we can do about it, so just get on with it. It's a natural fact of life, unfortunately. But now there is so much evidence that actually there is something you can do about it. There's a lot that can be done about it, a lot of preventative things that can be done. So it almost begs the question whether it's going to become unethical not to do anything about aging, because now we know that it doesn't have to be that way. And there's a better way, then we should be actually looking at how we implement this in at a societal level, so that it's something that's available to everyone, really. And I think we're starting to see that. We're starting to see a lot of funding and grants for age-related research, looking at aging itself, not just the diseases of aging. Because, for example, even if we cured cancer, it's expected that it would only add an extra 2 years of healthy life, because you'd still get Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, all the other age-related diseases. So this is why there's a big focus on, let's look at aging as the root cause, and let's look at what we can do to slow aging. Can we slow the onset of everything in one go? So
what's the maddest treatment that you've heard of, or is it taking the blood of your
the maddest
child?
Of your firstborn.
Yeah, where is the local council?
I know.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the most out there, taking the blood of a minor.
Am I doing anything? Am I improving my life at all, or my biological age, by consuming my children's placentas? Or is that a waste of a career?
So it's a similar idea. So when you're pregnant, the placenta has a lot of stem cells in it. So stem cells are cells that can turn into anything in the body. And unfortunately, as we get older, we lose a lot of our stem cells, which means we don't recover, we don't replace tissues and things as quickly. And some of the cells in the placenta are believed to be able to stimulate that again.
Sweet.
So
Deliveroo.
Delivery.
It's nearly time for us to wrap up, so I'd just like, as a closing remark, what is the one thing you would like our audience to take away from this session today? Katherine?
I think the easiest and most accessible one is to please listen to our podcast, What's My Aging, but also to start getting high quality extra virgin olive oil and drinking it. I couldn't believe the research on how good that is for you, and I wasn't doing it before. I've noticed no improvement, but
do it anyway.
how much in the cellular level?
How much do you have to drink?
I've had not that much. I haven't really had.
It's not a glass full.
But I want to. I have an intention, and I've set that.
Do it backstage. Just chug.
Thank you. Nichola?
I think it's just all about really thinking differently about how we age, you know. Whenever I talk about what I do, it used to be that people, if I mention I worked in aging, they would all say, oh, skin. It's all about the skin. Do you do beauty treatments or something like that? And it's like, actually, no, we need to think about aging being something much more than skin deep. Aging something that's happening in every cell in our body. It starts at the cellular level. So if you can do things like some of the biohacks we've been talking about, the diet, the cryo, exercise, sleep, all of these things are working at a cellular level. And if you improve the health of your cells on the inside, everything else on the outside will follow. So,
and tell them how old you are. 83.
Yeah. She drank everyone's blood.
Yeah, it works.
Kat?
I just say, get out, get curious, try a few different things and see what works for you. I think there's not enough play in our lives in terms of, being playful. So permission to play, try different things. I always think the more bonkers, the better. Probably they're the things that are going to work. And I think the other thing for me is also about as you get older, especially as a woman, I think it's about that acceptance of getting older and the strength that comes with that. And looking forward to the power and being in your own skin that comes from it. And I think that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Get out there, get divorced, stay single,
Get
don't
out
have
there.
kids.
Watch QVC Menopause Mondays.
Yeah, Menopause Mondays.
Thank you very much, Katherine, Nichola, and Kat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll just go. Side long.